All right, so now we're going to talk about the cochlea, which is a specialized structure that uses hair cells arranged in a spiral in order to hear, which is pretty wild. So let me just give my video a label here. So the first thing to establish is that the cochlea is basically some carefully arranged membranes and fluids that exist in a spiral-shaped passage inside your temporal bone, and specifically inside what's called the petrous part of your temporal bone. And that is because petrous means rocky or stone-like. And the reason for that is for acoustics. So if I was going to soundproof my office, I would put foam all over the walls, right? Because the high surface area and air pockets of the foam are going to deaden any sound that I put out. If I wanted to amplify the sound in my office, I would do something to make the room more echoic, so producing more echoes. So really hard, non-porous surfaces create environments where sound resonates, where it echoes. So if you've ever been in like a big marble building, for example, you'll know that, right? So the petrous part of your temporal bone is the most dense bone in your entire body. It's very, very dense. It doesn't have very many air spaces. And that is partially because the cochlea is in there, and you don't want the sound apparatus to be surrounded by foamy trabecular bone, because that would just deaden the sound that you're receiving. So what it looks like is basically a little passage in the bone that looks like that. So it's a little spiral. When you cut the spiral, you get a particular view, and that's what I'm going to show you. Actually, let's try that again. I'd like that circle to be taller. There we go. Okay. So actually, hold on just a second. Okay. That look more like that. There we go. So this membrane down here is called the basilar membrane. And this is scala tympani, scala vestibuli, and these are both filled with perilymph, which again is similar to plasma. So sitting on top of the basilar membrane is the organ of Corti, or spiral organ. And the organ of Corti is a specialized organ made of hair cells that basically moves according to the movement of the basilar membrane, and that's going to create the perception of sound. So let me make this a little bit of a different color. And we have a little mound of cells. Like that. And I'm going to make the hair cells white just to make them pop out a little bit here. So this membrane is called the tectorial membrane. And it's similar to the cupula in the Crista ampullaris, which means it's kind of a gelatinous membrane, and the tips of the kinocilia of the hair cells are embedded in that membrane. So the scala media, which is what this is filled with endolymph, which remember is rich in potassium. And then one thing that we can't ignore is the structure that actually makes the endolymph. So this is the scala media. And then we've got this very vascular structure here. So all those little red guys are blood vessels, and then I'm going to draw some collagen. And then we've got a very small columnar epithelium here. So this structure is called the stria vascularis. And let me move my drawing tool so I can do that. And it makes the endolymph. So it filters the blood through these capillaries, and then these columnar cells here change the potassium and sodium ratio, which makes endolymph. So the way that the cochlea works, and this is just one part of a spiral-shaped organ, the way that the cochlea works is essentially as sound waves make their way through the cochlea, the oval window, which is the one that the stapes beats against, causes sound vibrations up in the scala vestibuli. They twirl around, they go up the spiral all the way to the top, and then they turn around at the tip of the spiral, which is called the helicotrema, and then they bounce down through the scala tympani, and that pushes the basilar membrane up and down at the same frequency as the sound wave. So every time the basilar membrane moves up, the stereocilia and kinocilia basically get pushed into the tectorial membrane, and that depolarizes them. So let's say I have a sound that's jiggling the basilar membrane at 1,000 jiggles per second. I would get 1,000 hair cell depolarizations per second, and that would be 1,000 hertz, right? So that's basically the way the cochlea works, is the jiggling of the basilar membrane reflects the sound frequency being received, and that depolarizes the hair cell at the same rate or rhythm. And then these hair cells have innervation, and that innervation is going to pass through here, so they combine And they're going to, so have a very short distance. And then their ganglia or their cell bodies sit over here. So these are dendrites, cell bodies, and the axons are going to leave to form the, I can't write vertically very well, I apologize. Cochlear branch of cranial nerve 8. And then these cell bodies, since they live in this area that's kind of at the crux of the spiral, we call these the spiral ganglion. So that's how the cochlea works. So the cells, exact same hair cells as in the balance apparatus that I just explained, no difference in the hair cells really. It's just how the hair cells are arranged that makes the difference.